I'm just your average high school senior. I go to class, hang out with friends, and look forward to the holidays, like everyone else. A week before winter break, everything felt perfectly normal. The air was crisp, the sky overcast, and everyone was buzzing about the upcoming break. But as much as it felt like the calm before the storm, something was off. At first, I didn't pay much attention to it. It started with Mrs. Hale. She's been the school's substitute teacher for the past month, replacing our regular art teacher who was on maternity leave. Mrs. Hale always dressed in thick, cozy sweaters, like she was preparing for the cold. Her smile was kind, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Those eyes were cold. Maybe it was just me being paranoid, but I always felt like she was looking through us, as if we were nothing but a means to an end. The class was pretty uneventful. Mrs. Hale handed out a project for us to complete before the break, some winter crafts involving hand-carved ornaments. She told us to make them personal, something that represented who we were. She said she had a special gift for us, something she'd been working on for weeks. That's when she gave us the gifts. Little wooden ornaments, intricately carved, each one looking almost lifelike. They were eerily accurate representations of each of us. My ornament had my face, my eyes, my hair, down to every tiny detail. I laughed it off at first, like the rest of the class, but something about the way she handed them to us. It felt rehearsed. The first bell rang, and we all shuffled out, the ornaments tucked away in our bags. I shrugged it off, though there was this nagging feeling in the back of my mind. Something wasn't right. The air felt colder than usual, and when I passed Mrs. Hale's classroom on the way out, I could have sworn I saw her looking out the window with that same unblinking, almost unnatural gaze. It was only a day or two after receiving the ornaments that things started to get strange. It started with Sarah, one of the quieter girls in our class. She was absent on the third day after we got the ornaments, then again the next day. By the fifth day, she was just gone. Nobody seemed to think much of it at first, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. That same afternoon, I was walking to the bathroom when I heard a strange noise in the hallway. A soft creaking sound, like wood scraping against something. I looked over, and in the corner of the hall, I saw the janitor's closet door slowly opening. I stopped dead in my tracks. The door wasn't supposed to be open. The janitor's closet was always locked during school hours. I hesitated for a second, then walked past, my heart racing in my chest. I glanced inside, but all I saw was darkness. Later that day, the lights in the classroom flickered twice. Mrs. Hale didn't acknowledge it, as if it were normal, but the rest of us were starting to feel uncomfortable. I caught sight of one of the ornaments in the corner of the classroom, sitting on the windowsill. My ornament. It was angled in a way that made it look like it was staring directly at me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. My stomach churned as I glanced around, noticing that Sarah's ornament was missing. The seat beside me was empty, and her absence felt heavier now. It wasn't long before more students started missing, first Alex, then Ryan. And the worst part? Every time someone disappeared, their ornament would move. At first I thought I was just imagining it, but by the third day, when Tyler was gone, it was impossible to ignore. I didn't tell anyone. Everyone was too caught up in the excitement of winter break to care about what was happening. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. I knew something was wrong with those ornaments. They were connected. I started snooping around, looking for anything that might explain what was happening. One night, I stayed late after school, creeping into the art room when I thought Mrs. Hale had left for the day. That's when I saw it. The ornaments weren't just decorations. They were alive. I don't know how else to describe it. They seemed to pulse, their wooden faces shifting in the light. I moved closer, my heart pounding in my chest. I reached for Sarah's ornament, the one she'd made in class, and as soon as I touched it, the room went cold. I froze. The eyes on the ornament were not Sarah's. They were mine. My breath caught in my throat. I backed away, horrified, but my foot knocked into something. The sound echoed in the silence. That's when I heard her voice, soft, eerie, coming from the corner of the room. I knew then, with chilling certainty, that the ornament wasn't just an object. It was alive, and it had a purpose, a dark intent that I couldn't fathom. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut, leaving me breathless and terrified. "Why are you looking at my gifts, dear?" And it wanted something from me. What that was, I couldn't say, but I knew it wasn't good. The doll's eyes seemed to bore into my soul, searching for something. I felt exposed, vulnerable, as if it could see my deepest fears and darkest secrets. I had to do something, anything to break free from its grasp. But how? The room seemed to close in around me, the walls pressing in, the whispers growing louder. I was trapped in a nightmare, and there was no escape. I turned. Mrs. Hale stood there in the doorway, her smile now wide and unsettling. Her eyes glittered in the dim light, and something about her, it wasn't human anymore. I couldn't breathe. Mrs. Hale stepped forward, her movements slow, deliberate. "You don't understand, do you?" she cooed, her voice like velvet, but her words were sharp. The truth hit me like a punch to the stomach. It wasn't just about the ornaments. It wasn't just about them. It was about her. I remembered something from when I first saw her. She never aged. She looked the same as when I first met her, and she'd been working here for years. But it wasn't natural. I could see it now, the subtle distortion in her face, the way her skin didn't quite move right when she spoke. "The ornaments," she said, stepping closer, "are part of a very special tradition. A ritual, if you will. Every year I need new replacements." I could hardly breathe. My hands were shaking as I backed toward the door, but she moved faster. I turned to run, but something slammed into the door behind me, locking it. "You can't leave," she whispered. "You'll be part of the collection soon enough." I ran for the window, but when I turned around, her face was right in front of me. Too close. I felt the cold. The eyes, those eyes, they were burning through me. Then it hit me. The ornaments, the ritual. I could feel it now, the pull of whatever dark power was coursing through those wooden figures. In a last-ditch effort, I grabbed the nearest ornament, Ryan's. It felt heavy in my hands, cold to the touch. The room felt suffocating. Mrs. Hale was moving closer, her steps deliberate. I threw the ornament out the window, shattering it into pieces. For a moment, everything stopped. The air thickened, then swirled. Suddenly, the ground trembled, and I heard the soft, horrified wails of all the missing students. Sarah, Alex, Ryan, rising from the shattered pieces. They begged me to stop, but I couldn't. I had to escape. When I woke up, it was morning. I was outside, gasping for air, trembling. The school was eerily quiet, too quiet. I don't know how I escaped. All I remember is running until my legs couldn't carry me anymore. The ornaments are gone, shattered, destroyed. But something still lingers. I know it's not over. I hear things, whispers in the dark. I can feel those eyes watching me, even when no one is around. And every time I pass a store window, I swear I see someone staring back at me, someone with my face. I thought it would end with me escaping, but now I know. I was only a piece in her collection. The air outside was brittle with cold, a sharpness that stung my lungs as I inhaled. I stumbled down the empty streets, the early morning stillness pressing in on me like a suffocating blanket. My mind raced. The shattered ornaments, the cries of my classmates. I couldn't tell if it was real or a twisted nightmare clawing its way into my waking hours. But the marks on my palms, raw from gripping the jagged wooden shards, told me the truth. Something had to be done. I spent the next few days in a daze. Winter break had started, and the school remained eerily silent, as though the entire building was holding its breath. The ornaments were gone, every trace of them wiped from existence. Even Mrs. Hale's name was missing from the faculty directory, but the whispers didn't stop. They followed me home, slipping through the cracks of my consciousness. Then the dreams began. Every night, I found myself back in the art room, the ornaments whole and lined up again, But this time, they weren't just sitting there. They moved, their tiny wooden limbs jerking like puppets on tangled strings. And always, Mrs. Hale's voice echoed in the background, growing louder until it drowned out everything else. "You broke the circle," she said in one dream, her voice like splintering wood. "You invited them back." I woke up drenched in sweat, the whispers in my room louder than ever. They begged, pleaded, screamed. I couldn't shut them out. I had to go back. It was a foolish idea, I knew. Returning to the school, breaking in after dark, it was the kind of thing you'd see in a horror movie, the kind of decision that always ended badly. But I couldn't ignore the pull. Something was unfinished, and if I didn't confront it, I knew the whispers would never stop. I slipped through the side entrance, my flashlight trembling in my hand. The hallways were deserted, the kind of empty that felt wrong, like something was watching from the shadows. The art room loomed ahead, its door slightly ajar. Inside, the air was colder than I remembered, heavy with the scent of wood and varnish. My breath fogged in front of me as I stepped inside. The room was dark, except for a faint glow coming from the far corner. The ornaments, they were back. But they weren't sitting on the windowsill like before. They floated, suspended in midair, each one turning slowly as if on invisible strings. My stomach twisted as I counted them. Sarah, Alex, Ryan, Tyler, and me. My own ornament hung among them, its eyes fixed on me with a lifelike intensity that sent a chill down my spine. "You shouldn't have come back." Her voice came from behind me, soft and venomous. I turned, and there she was, Mrs. Hale, her figure more distorted than ever. Her eyes were black voids, her skin stretched too tight over her angular face. "This isn't your place," she hissed, stepping closer. "You've meddled in something you don't understand." I backed away, my heart hammering in my chest. "What do you want from me?" She tilted her head, her expression almost pitying. "It's not about what I want, dear. It's about balance. You broke the circle, and now the souls are restless. They're trapped between worlds, and it's your fault." Her words struck me like a blow. The cries of my classmates, Sarah, Alex, Ryan, echoed in my mind. Had I doomed them? Was my desperate attempt to escape what had truly sealed their fate? "Then let them go," I shouted, my voice cracking. "Bring them back!" Mrs. Hale's laughter was cold and hollow. "It's not that simple. Their essence is bound to the ornaments, and the ornaments to the ritual. You destroyed the link, and now they're lost. Only a new ritual can set them free." I didn't trust her. Every instinct screamed that she was lying, manipulating me. But what choice did I have? The whispers, the dreams, they would haunt me forever if I didn't try to make things right. "What do I have to do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Her smile widened, exposing teeth that were too sharp, too jagged. "Recreate the circle, complete the craft. Only then can the spirits find peace." She gestured to the workbench at the center of the room. A carving knife lay there, along with blocks of wood and jars of paint. My hands trembled as I approached, the weight of her gaze pressing down on me. "You'll need to carve something personal," she said, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. "Something that represents you. Only then will the ritual be complete." I didn't trust her, but I didn't have another plan. I picked up the knife, the cool metal biting into my palm. My mind raced as I began to carve, each stroke of the blade deliberate. I wasn't just carving an ornament, I was carving a way out. Hours passed, though it felt like an eternity. The figure in my hands slowly took shape, a small wooden figure, its features rough but unmistakable. It was me. But this time I was in control. This time I would set the terms. Mrs. Hale watched in silence, her expression unreadable. When I finished, I placed the figure in the center of the circle of floating ornaments. The air grew heavy, charged with energy. "Now," she said, her voice low and commanding, seal the ritual. I hesitated. Every fiber of my being screamed that this was a trap. But then I looked at the ornaments, at the faces of my classmates. I couldn't leave them like this. I took a deep breath and reached for the knife. With a quick, deliberate motion, I pricked my finger, letting a drop of blood fall onto the wooden figure. The room shuddered, the ornaments trembling in the air. But instead of binding me, the energy shifted. I had carved my own rules, my own protections. The circle of power expanded, engulfing Mrs. Hale. "No!" she shrieked, her form twisting and contorting as the energy consumed her. "You don't understand what you've done!" The ornaments glowed brightly, then shattered into a cascade of light. I shielded my eyes, the cries of my classmates rising into a deafening crescendo before fading into silence. When I opened my eyes, the room was empty. The ornaments were gone, and so was Mrs. Hale. The next day, the missing students returned. Sarah, Alex, Ryan, they were back, confused but unharmed, with no memory of what had happened. The whispers stopped, the dreams faded. The school went back to normal, as if nothing had ever happened. But I knew better. The power of the ornaments, the ritual, it wasn't gone. It was waiting, dormant. As for Mrs. Hale, she never returned. Her classroom was cleaned out, her name erased from every record. But sometimes, late at night, I feel the faintest chill in the air, and I know she's still out there, watching. I keep the carving I made on my nightstand, a reminder of what happened, a reminder of what I survived, and every winter, when the air turns cold and the nights grow long, I make sure to check the windows, just in case.